Hey guys, welcome. My name's Capricia, and I'm one of the MD ambassadors here. And so I see a few more people are joining us. But I just wanted to introduce this Underrepresented in Medicine series to you guys. And I think it's really beneficial because it gives a much needed perspective. And on both sides, for the students that are incoming, it gives you a good chance to hear from someone that looks like you, someone with shared experiences, and to ask the questions that you might be wondering. And then for us students, it gives us the opportunity to give our perspective and share our story. And so I hope you guys enjoy this. Feel free to ask anything. You can message in the chat, and I'm sure people will answer. But we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Capricia. So hi, everybody. My name's Claire. I'm another MD ambassador. I'm one of the coordinators for the program. This actually, Capricia didn't say, is her idea. She is the president of Black Medical Association, and I'm just going to plug Capricia because she's awesome. But we're really excited to start doing these underrepresented in medicine webinars, like Capricia said, to hear from someone who looks like you and is going down this same path towards medical school, and being a physician is really important in the process. So today we're going to hear from the Latino Medical Student Association. Here with me, our panelists are Angelina Palacios, Mayra Shafiq, Sarah Gonzalez, Michelle Malik, and Capricia. If you have any questions that you want to ask as we go, feel free to put them in the chat, or if we come to a break in the conversation, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, and we'll get to them as we go. We also have a couple questions that we have prepared for all of our panelists to talk about, so that you can get to know a little bit more about LMSA and what we do on campus at Wayne State School of Medicine. So with that, we'll get started. If our panelists want to introduce themselves, I can start us off. So like I said, I'm the coordinator for the MD Ambassadors. My name's Claire. I'm originally from California, and I like to run in my free time. I guess I'll do a fun fact. Angelina, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Angelina. I'm actually originally from Detroit, Southwest Detroit. So I kind of came back to my community, which is great. I went to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor for undergrad, and I studied biochemistry. And I chose Wayne State exactly to come back to my community. That's my biggest motivator to go to medical school, is to give back to my community. So I figured, why not start my roots here in medical school? Doesn't make sense not to. So, and I also love Wayne. I love our curriculum, that we're systems-based and we're on a fast-paced track. We can answer more questions about that later. And like Claire mentioned, I'm the president of LMSA. That's kind of what takes up most of my extracurricular time. But I know a lot of our board members are part of other stuff too, but that's what I'm mainly focused on, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Mayra Shafiq. I was born in Mexico, and I moved to California with my family when I was 4 years old. I lived in California up until last year when I moved here to Michigan with my family. I went to UC Davis for both undergrad and grad school. I have a bachelor's degree in neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, and I have a master's degree in nutritional biology. And I'm also was a non-traditional applicant. I have 2 kids and a family, 2 dogs. So it's been a while since I graduated from undergrad. And I chose Wayne State mainly because, I grew up in an urban community, and I wanted to make sure that I was trained in an urban community. And Wayne State happens to be that. So that's why I chose Wayne State. And my involvements in Wayne State, at Wayne State. So I'm currently the mentorship chair of LMSA, and I'm also one of the co-coordinators for a clinic called Make Your Date that aims to decrease preterm birth here in Detroit. And I'm also part of a research elective, and I'm also focusing currently on research that's centered around preterm birth.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm also from California. I went to the University of Irvine for undergrad, and I also graduated a long time ago. So, very non-traditional. I graduated in 2012 and started med school last year. So, I'm involved in LMSA, and then also I do clinic coordinating for Amigos Médicos, which is also part of LMSA, and I co-coordinate the dermatology interest group. Let's see, I chose Wayne. It was funny. I was asking my friend, and he goes, "Because I made you come here. I'm your best friend." But although that did have some influence, Wayne just has a really there's a lot of opportunities to work with diverse communities and that are very underserved here. So, you know, that you have a lot here to learn from. And let's see, I don't know if I have a fun fact about myself, but if I think about it, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Michelle Malik. I'm from the Metro Detroit area. So I went to Wayne for undergrad actually, and I majored in biological sciences honors, and I minored in Spanish language. And then I've lived here all 4 years when I was going to undergrad. And so then I chose to go to Wayne State because I really appreciate, like during my pre-med years, like the no frills approach to medicine. You really see the reality of medicine here, especially with the underserved population. So it's definitely a no BS, no frills. You learn all the practical skills you need early on, and you can be very well trained for applying to residency. And then at Wayne, so majority of my extracurricular time, like most of the people here, is dedicated to LMSA. I co-run the Spanish tutoring for LMSA and medical Spanish with Sarah and a few other people who aren't here today. And I'm also involved in street medicine, and I'm a junior editor for the Clinical Research and Practice Journal here at Wayne. And so that's basically me.
Thank you guys so much for sharing a little bit more about yourselves. And I just want to welcome any of the people that are here with us today. If you have any questions that are related to those other things that our panelists have brought up, you're totally free to ask about those as well. And I think we'll just get started with some of the questions that we've talked about beforehand. So just to start off with a little bit about LMSA. So what is your organization about?
So I'll take that one. So we really strive to serve the underserved Latino population here in Detroit. So, I mean, I'm not sure where everyone's from here in the group, but Southwest Detroit is mainly Latino population in Detroit. It's in the Southwest region, and it's where I grew up. And so we serve a lot of clinical locations there. We serve a lot of outreach locations there. And what we try to do is bridge the gap between the medical school and that community. And I think it's just really cool because like sometimes I'll be in clinic and some people like don't even realize that there's a medical school in Detroit, and I'll be like, yeah, I actually go to the medical school, and like it's interesting to like talk to them and tell them these things in Spanish, and like then they're like, oh well, where are you from? And then I'm like, oh, I'm from Southwest, and then they're like even more engaged. So that's kind of like that aspect. But then on the other aspect, we also try to do events like this and it promote Latino diversity in the medical school itself. There's, you know, Wayne State's still pushing with that effort, but we want to improve our numbers even more every single day. And that's something that, you know, through events like this, through other events that we're planning that we can talk about later, we really try to empower Latinos to first be like welcome to come to medical school, be empowered to come to medical school, and then you know, choose Wayne State in the meantime, you know, if they want to. So yeah, that's kind of a little overview of LMSA.
Awesome. So if you just want to elaborate a little bit more about that, you talked about like your population serving in Southwest Detroit, but do you want to talk about some of those like unique aspects? So maybe Sarah and Michelle can talk about the Spanish language and coordinating Amigos Médicos and all that stuff.
Okay, so Spanish language, believe it or not, is one of the most popular things, like with LMSA. I think when we send out the signups, usually pre-COVID, people would like fill it up within seconds. So essentially what we do is we prepare presentations like 1 to 2 times a month. And usually they're during lunchtime in person, and sometimes there's free food, pre-COVID, obviously. But we just basically go over the basics of taking a patient history in Spanish, how to ask your patient if something hurts, how to verify, follow up with them, you know, anything that you would do in English when you interact with a patient, we teach people how to do in Spanish. So we give them key words and phrases that they should know. And then hopefully when they're on rotation or something, before a translator can get on site, they can at least get important information down. And then that basically sums up Spanish language. The hope is that once everything opens up again, people will actually be able to put this into practice, because we do have clinics that we're affiliated with, like All Saints. We have some like tele-check-ins that we're doing during COVID, so we're still active, and we actually talk to patients completely in Spanish over the phone to make sure that all their needs are being met during the pandemic. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to put that into practice. It's just a matter of the drive and passion of the individual student volunteering.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit more about like the clinical aspect that Michelle was just talking about. So pre-COVID, we had All Saints Clinic, which was a student-run clinic in like the basement of a church, and it's like a food pantry. And then at the same time, if people wanted to like check their glucose or check their blood pressure, we had a table set up there to be able to help them, and that's where we helped a lot of like the Latinos of the community. But now post-COVID, or not post-COVID, hopefully soon post-COVID, but now during COVID, we've transitioned to telemedicine. Well, we call them tele-check-ins. And what we do is we just call up people. Like I have a list of community members that were interested in getting phone calls, and we check in on them, see how they're doing. We're serving some of, I don't know if anybody's familiar with LMSA, but they have an elderly population that, is really being isolated right now because of everything that's happening. So we're doing like, these tele-check-ins just to see how they're doing. Explain to them the changes that are going on through COVID. So what is telemedicine? This whole new like shifting to online. Can my doctor really diagnose a sprained ankle over the phone? Yes, he can. Like stuff like that. Like we've still tried to keep in touch with the community even throughout all these hard times. And that's like the clinical aspect of it.
Awesome. Thanks. And does anyone else have anything they want to share? Michelle?
Yeah, so Claire, I see that someone, Nancy Mendez Lozano, said, I'm passionate about getting involved in the underserved community. So this is related to the question, so I thought I'd bring it up. How quickly were you able to do this at Wayne State University, and how did you balance your civic responsibility with your academic responsibilities? So we can touch on that. So I'll get us started. So basically, you can get involved in helping the underserved community from day one. So Dr. Jennifer Mendez, who is the service learning champion at this medical school, she makes sure that students get involved in doing volunteer activities from day one, even during the time of COVID. You can get involved with LMSA. Usually pre-COVID, we would get a list of all of the eligible free clinics in the Detroit area, and outreach activities, which are non-clinical activities that we could get involved in. And then it's free reign up to you to volunteer as much or as little as you want in all these clinics, as long as you meet like a baseline requirement. And then in terms of balancing our responsibilities, it's up to the individual student. So I personally wanted to focus more on getting used to the academic balance of first year, so I wasn't that involved my first year. But if you feel like you have a good hold on your classes from the beginning, you can volunteer more or less. It's up to you, as long as you meet your minimum hours. So if anyone else wants to chime in too.
I guess I'll say something also. Michelle touched on it, but they integrated into our curriculum. So we do have like requirements of hours that we need to do of outreach and clinical, but once you cap those, you can go above and beyond. Like they're really like flexible with you doing what you want to do. Wayne State's even really flexible of you starting your own initiatives. Like day one, I remember in orientation, they were like, if you want to start anything, just give us a holler and like we'll work with you to do it. And I've seen that through like my own eyes and like my own experiences that they're serious about that. Like they're free range, like you can start something that you find valuable in the community as well. So that's really awesome. And in terms of flexibility, yeah, like Michelle mentioned, like just keep up with your classes and you can do as much as you want. I found that clinic and like outreach is actually an escape for me. So if I was like getting too stressed out about something, I'm like, okay, tomorrow I can go see real people and not a book. And like it was like really helpful for me to like de-stress in that way and like just talk to people. So
Yeah, and I was also going to add in for first year med students, I think we just had to wait to actually be into clinic until we finished like our first two units, or like our two first experiences in our clinical skills. But then after that, we were free to go about clinics as long as there was availability. Yeah, and in terms of like finding, I think that because, I mean, even pre-COVID, our classes were like, you could either go to lecture or you could stream the lectures that were recorded. So I feel like that also made it very flexible. Like you could, while a class was happening, you could still go and volunteer. And like, as Angelina was saying, like, it's kind of like an escape of like of the reality of being in med school. Like, and like you actually learn things. Like we started our clinical our CEC, which now during year 2 we actually are able to go into clinics, and we were in cardiopulm and we had a patient that had asthma, and like I didn't like theoretically like reading about treatments for asthma, for example, like it kind of, you know, I would read it and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. But then when I actually saw it in the patient, I was like, this makes more sense. Like why you'll eventually learn about this, but like LABA versus SABA, like it actually makes sense now after just that one like 15-minute encounter with a patient.
Yeah, so kind of what Myra was talking about, just for a little bit of background, we have a clinical skills course during our first 2 years. So clinical skills is we practice with standardized patients, practicing patient encounters and physical exam maneuvers so that we're prepared for our 3rd year being able to perform those physical exam maneuvers proficiently, or at least at an advanced beginner level, so that we can be successful in helping in the clinics that we go to in our 3rd year for our like with our preceptors. And something else that I just want to mention really quickly about balance is it's very personal and individual. So balance is really just something you have to define on your own, and it's a check-in that you have to have with yourself before going in and starting and taking on a ton of responsibilities. So I think it's something that initially, you know, how do I want to be doing academically and what's my goals academically is probably a good starting point. But from there, you know, depending on those goals, you'll have different amounts of time to be balancing all of your other activities. So that's just something that I wanted to throw in there because I think it's very personal. I think there are a ton of benefits to spending a lot of time in the community, but there's also an kind of a minimum amount of time for people that they need to be spending with the books, especially 1st and 2nd year, to be successful on our exams.
And that's very true. Like for me, because I have a family outside of medical school, in the beginning, I was very cautious in terms of what activity I was picking up. Because at the end of the day, I still have to come home to 2 small children that are both under 5. So yeah, so it's just like picking and choosing. But along with having a family, like I feel like I'm better able to manage my time. Like I know my study time is limited, so that means that amount of time that I have where the kids are in daycare or whatnot, or if my husband's home and taking care of them, like I know that I have to take advantage of that time in order to study or stream a lecture or something. So it pros and cons, but it's more of a pro because now I'm better able to manage my time.
Thanks for sharing. So our next question from the chat is, does LMSA work closely with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion? What's being done at an administrative level to ensure we improve minority representation at the medical school? So I just want to point out that below the message in the chat, Dr. Brooks is a counselor and he actually works at the ODI. So if you have any specific questions about diversity and inclusion, that we can't answer because we're students, we're not administrators. You feel free to direct your questions to the ODI and to Dr. Brooks because he's joining us today. So does anyone want to speak to this?
Well, I'll give you a little background since the question was asked. So prior to 2015, and I joined Wayne State in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion in 2016. But prior to 2015, in the years just prior, the school had really gone for several years with a real decline in URM students. And that's across the board, African American, Latino, and Native American students. And in 2015, our Vice Dean of Office, the Vice Dean of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Dr. Herbert Smitherman, was asked to form a task force to address that issue. And he convened a study and really a comprehensive examination as to why this happened. And there's a lot of things you could point to. I mean, previous administrations really just kind of let it lapse. And there was a real steep decline where Wayne State had been one of the leaders in URM students in the, selected for the student body. It had really fallen off. So 2015, he put together a task force to change that. And I can say since then, the numbers have dramatically increased. And we monitor that. I know, like I said, our Vice Dean, Dr. Herbert Smitherman, and our director, Dr. DeAndrea Matthews, they monitor that very closely as to how many URM students are being admitted. We look at where they're, where we're gathering students. We're looking at our recruitment efforts. So we're actively engaged in that really throughout every year. And we've been successful in dramatically increasing the numbers. Now, we also offer the post-baccalaureate program. I don't know if you may or may not be familiar with it, but that is also a program in which we give opportunity to URM students who meet the qualifications. And we're very conscious of who we select for that program. So we try to have a good balance of URM students across ethnic backgrounds. So we're conscious of that. Now, by no means are we done, or we're at a most comfortable place. I say that we're doing okay, and we can do a lot better. So I would say that if you know of students, or if you have any particular schools or student organizations outside of Wayne State that you would like us maybe to reach out to, or if you know good students that you feel like would be great at Wayne State, let us know. My email is up there. That's the best way to reach me, and I can certainly pass the information on. So with that, I'll take any questions. But that's kind of our, sort of a quick overview.
Thank you so much for answering that better than any of us students could answer it. If any questions come up in the chat, we can just read them out and you can answer them as we go. And I want to get to Gustavo's question really quickly because it's going up in my chat and I just want to make sure that I get to it before it goes not in my window. So for those who went to undergrad or lived in California, how was it adjusting to life in Detroit? And I think really this applies to anyone who ever did not live in Detroit. How is it adjusting to life in Detroit?
Do you want to go first, Myra?
Go ahead.
It's difficult. Like Detroit, or living in Detroit was my first time being this far away from my family. Well, I used to live in LA and moved to San Francisco for 2 years before moving here, but I was still in the same state, and like a flight from San Francisco to LA is 45 minutes. But that being said, it's difficult mainly because I don't have a car and I'm here by myself. So like it's the motor city. It's not like sustainable for not having a car. Like it's very difficult. So However, now that we're in COVID and it's like I'm not leaving my house, I don't really see a need right now to do that investment until maybe next year. So it's a little bit easier. But yeah, the first year for me was really rough, and it was a lot of roller coaster of emotions. When I look back on my first year, I'm just like, I don't like what, why, but it like, I think I'm in a better space in my second year where like things don't affect me as much. And that's what I think a lot of it had to do with it too. Like everything that would happen would just affect me to a different state that I was just so bummed out by everything. So we each get a class counselor, although she's not always available for I guess like de-stressing. She does have a lot of really great resources to recommend, but you guys will have a different class counselor. I'm not exactly sure who the how it goes, because it's one class counselor per year. And then I see that Nancy's question is kind of like that. So handling resources, do you find the professors approachable? I think that there's a lot of communication, and if you just reach out, they'll be okay. But here at Wayne State, the way it works, if you need some sort of excused absence or you need some time off or something, you message your class counselor and you just let her know, and she tells your instructors or whatever assignment that you had that you're not going to do it. And there's like, they don't need to know why, like that's your business. She takes care of it, and then you can have that moment for yourself. But yeah, I don't know if Myra or Clara, also since you're from California, you want to say something.
I was just going to say, really similar to Sarah, it's like I've lived in California basically since I was 4 years old, and it was the first time I've been away from like my extended family and like my ultimate support system that would like be available if I needed a babysitter. So that was a bit of a rough start. But I feel like the counselor, like Sarah was saying, if anything ever came up, she was really helpful in terms of like if one of the kids was sick or something, then I would just get an excused absence or make up what I needed to make up. But yeah, I think the hardest part for me was getting used to the cold. Like if I ever wanted to see the snow, I could just drive 2 hours to Tahoe and I would be okay for the day. And then I would go home to my warm house, which is like not the case. And it was like freezing. I remember I asked one of my classmates the first time they got to the teens, and I was like, is this like snow weather where you get to stay home? And he's like, no, this is like normal. And I was just shocked. But I got used to it. The kids got used to it. And I kind of also had a similar car issue because we drove here. We only brought one car. My husband needed it for the kids. I was like using the public transportation system and biking, but I went to UC Davis, or University of California, Davis. That was like a bike friendly town. And so coming to Detroit, and where there's like very limited bike lanes, that was kind of a shock to me. But it's like, it took me like a second to adjust. But I'm also like a quick walk over to, a 30-minute walk to campus if needed. But yeah, those are like the biggest things I struggled with year one.
Yeah, it's definitely a big change. I have a little different story. I actually went to undergrad in Ohio. So I grew up in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and I went to Miami University, which is in a tiny town outside of Cincinnati. And it was a great time, a wonderful 4 years. And then I moved 4 hours straight north, and the kind of Kentucky winters I had been used to got about 10 degrees colder. And then it was like a whole new learning curve. I had to get another jacket because I just wasn't ready. But I think I had a little bit different of an experience because I spent my undergrad kind of getting used to being away from my family. And then my family ended up all moving to the Midwest for when I went to med school. So now my mom's in Wisconsin and my brother's in Indiana. So it's like they're all close now. And so I definitely have a little bit different of an experience. But I think the most different thing about being in Detroit from like my tiny town in Ohio is just like sometimes I just want to see like the trees and I want to go to the forest. And I am really used to, because of California, being able to go to the mountains and the ocean and the forests. And so it's hard because I have to like plan in my day, like I'm going to drive to this place. I'm going to drive to the park. I'm going to drive to Belle Isle. And so I think it just like, there's a little more planning involved when you want to like go into nature, but that's part of the nature of going to a big school in a big urban environment. So it's a trade-off, but it's worth it for the education that you get here. Angelina, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so I saw Christian's question about how do you guys feel from in-person patient encounters compared to telemedicine, pros and cons. How is the let's touch on that first part first. I honestly, it is what it is, right? Like you don't get to be with somebody in person. You don't get to, you know, like if they're having a hard day, you don't get to like empathize visually with them because we do phone calls with them. And so it's hard because sometimes people do tell you that they really are struggling during the pandemic and stuff like that. And you just want to like, not hug them, but like, you know, you really you want to make sure that they understand that you're listening to them. But then at the end of the conversation, they're just so appreciative that they had this moment to talk to somebody, especially somebody that could give them resources, because we do have resources for them that's another thing about Detroit that a lot of people outside Detroit don't realize, is that we have a lot of resources, like almost overwhelming amount of resources. And so sometimes like it's even hard to find, like scavenge through the resources, but like we have a list that we can like give to people and help them. And I think that's like a pro of it, right? Like it, even in during this really, really hard time, like we're able to help people in even the smallest way. Like even if they just want to tell me like their kids are driving them crazy, like that's cool. Like, but I'm here for you. And that's, you know, that's one of the reasons that why I want to become a physician, is to listen to people, truly listen to people. But of course the cons are, you know, you don't know if the person is really like hearing you and empathize, like you don't really know if the person is understanding that you're really here for them, right? Like, but I tried so hard to tell them, and I don't know if we mentioned this, but these phone calls are strictly in Spanish, so it's really like it hits on another level to be able to talk to somebody in their native language and them understand, like, you know, this is a person that's in school right now and they're like talking to me, like it's just, they really, really appreciate it. They really appreciate your time, especially like the older folks. Like they'll be like, oh, like, muchas gracias por su tiempo. And I'm like, no, muchas gracias por tu tiempo. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, we're here together. Like, I don't know. I really enjoyed the telemedicine encounters. Even though I really also love like the in-person encounters, which is, you know, our M1s, they're not going to have the in-person encounter their first year. Hopefully they will their second year. But that's something really valuable that I took out of my first year, was the in-person encounters. And how is the learning environment at Wayne State? Is it competitive, or do you see more cooperative environment among students? So I don't know if you guys are familiar that we're pass-fail, so that automatically leads to a less competitive environment. So a lot of times, like what I've been able to find, like, so I went to U of M Ann Arbor, which it's a pretty competitive school when you're on the pre-med track. So when I actually came to Wayne, it was kind of like a sigh of relief to like, for other people to be like, yo, I didn't get that. Did you get that? And I'd be like, oh no, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I found that like a lot of people like are much more honest about where they're at. Of course it's medical school, and of course you're going to have some gunners, but you tend to like kind of like push them away. And like Michelle and I, like, we'll be talking and we're like, yo, what was that? And then like she'll explain something to me, and like I'll be like, oh, okay, I get it now. So it's definitely like who you surround yourself with. And I've been able to find a lot of people who are much more honest about their journey. Like the M2s that we had before us were super, super nice, and they were super like open with us, and like they'd be like, hey, if somebody tells you they're studying for 16 hours a day, they're lying. And I'd be like, oh really? Okay, cool. Like, because I was getting a little bit worried. But yeah, that was my experience. That's my experience so far.
Yeah, Angelina brings up a lot of good points. Like same experience for me. To build off of that, so like with respect to like learning environment and everything, I also wanted to mention for like prospective M1s that our clinical skills, so it's telemedicine, but it's focused on developing the patient history aspect of it. So ultimately, when you become a physician, when you go into rotations, learning how to take a good, thorough history, making sure you ask all the questions and you understand how to speak to a person to get what they're not telling you, either like, through cues or verbally, is important. So you don't lose out on that. It's just that you don't get to like see someone face to face and like see their expressions or anything. But you're training another part of your skill set. So you have to look at it in that way, which is what most of us have gotten used to this year. And then with the environment here, so it's like just like in life, you'll see people who are willing to help you and some people aren't. So it's about just reaching out to people. So one of the things that I learned in my first year is to never be afraid to ask someone, how did you do this, or ask for help, or can you show me how you're studying, or so never ever be afraid to just like reach out to someone. Like here we have student affairs, so your counselor and everybody. You can talk to them and say that, hey, I don't understand how to study for like anatomy lab or something like that, and they'll help you out. And you can ask your fellow group members. So I was super fortunate enough to have a group of people who were like from different stages in life. And so some of them had gone to grad school, some of them had like came out straight up from undergrad. And, with different years of experience, you develop different ways of like learning and how to like approach subjects. So you can ask your group members for advice. We also have the Office of Learning and Teaching here at Wayne State, which is a phenomenal resource. You can reach out to them and say that, hey, can you give me like a student tutor that I can talk, excuse me, that I can talk to, that can give me tips on how they studied, or can I like talk to someone about different study strategies? So even if you feel like because with COVID and also interviewing and like getting accepted, you might be isolated. You're not truly isolated if you reach out.
Yeah, so kind of just to go off of what Michelle is talking about with the groups, our anatomy lab is in like groups of 6. Obviously with COVID, it's a little bit different, but the way it was for us, because we had anatomy lab last year, was we had groups of 6. Those groups of 6 were in a larger learning community. So my color was orange. So within orange, there was 8 or so tables of 6 people. So all of our events really revolve around those learning communities, and it helps you kind of develop your own small community in the larger community of Wayne. So, and on top of that, there's the same colors every year. So my mentor from the year above us was also like orange, and he was assigned to our table. And so the 6 of us had the same mentor. If that kind of gives a little bit more clarity and insight. And I also want to go back to Gustavo's question about mentorship at Wayne, because I know, Myra, you're our mentorship coordinator for LMSA. So if you want to just say a little bit about that right now.
So this is actually a fairly new position that we started. We're just trying to get more outreach to increase the number of Latinx students at the School of Medicine. So we're kind of still like, we've brainstormed a lot of ideas, and we are hoping to partner more with like the undergraduate campus to try to get more direct mentorship to any pre-med students that are there. And we're also in the hopes of like reaching out to like high school students in Detroit to try to get more mentorship, and like maybe a conference here and there, just like that's what we've been brainstorming. And then just like have more mixers, because I know when I was an undergrad, like a long story short, like when I was an undergrad, I wanted to be a doctor, but then I at some point I was like, I'm just gonna go to grad school instead. But anyway, but seeing someone like even like some like the LMSA at like the UC Davis School of Medicine, for me that was like, okay, I can see myself in their shoes one day. Or like even like the Latino Graduate Student Association, which I was part of when I was in grad school. It's like I can see myself there because I'm seeing those students there. So that's what we're trying to do now. And we're, like I said, it's fairly new, and we are kicking it off. But if anybody would like to have a mentor through LMSA, please shoot me an email. I'll include it in the chat box, and we can pair you up with one of our LMSA members. I have a list of med students that are willing to take on students if you would like one.
Yeah, and then I guess another aspect of mentorship outside of LMSA, but in Wayne State School of Medicine as a whole, is if you are struggling academically, you get your first year, you get assigned an SIL, and they're basically an M2 mentor that can tell you like what their learning strategies are, what they did for that unit, stuff like that. And I had one my first year, and she was great, and like we still text every once in a while, and she hooked me up with like some awesome resources when I was struggling. So like that's a really cool part of Wayne. Like they really want you to succeed, and the people who are succeeding before you is the people who they want you to like base it off of. So I think that was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to be struggling in your classes to get an SIL. I personally, like, having had that long transition from undergrad and in grad school, even though I was taking exams, it was like a different style of exam taking. I knew I was going to struggle kind of like reshaping like my way of thinking and like writing papers and doing oral presentations and doing a multiple choice exam. So like I got an SIL week 2 of like first year because I knew that was going to be a struggle for me. And like just preventative medicine for me is like super important. So why prevent something instead of like doing it beforehand, instead of like when like I knew myself and I knew that if I didn't do it, I was going to be struggling.
Yeah, I'm so glad that both you and Angelina mentioned that. Like, even if, like, it's not like, you know, that you're struggling, you need an SIL. I think every person should take advantage of, like, finding a second year student through the OLT, Office of Learning and Teaching, because if you can talk to someone who's gone through the courses, they can give you an idea of how hard or easy or difficult everything is. Like, one thing in medical school is like anatomy lab is notoriously known for being very challenging to study for. And if you can talk to students who tell you about what textbooks they used or what online atlas they used, like early on, then you'll be able to, like Myra said, prevent mistakes from happening. Because, you know, the reality is like the students that are first generation, like myself, or don't have anyone in their direct family who is in medicine, you don't really know what to expect. So it's very important that, you know, you don't feel bad about reaching out and preparing yourself using the best tools at your disposal so you don't regret it later.
Yeah.
And Jack,
like, oh, sorry.
oh,
I was just going to say, like
no,
Claire said, you also have the learning community mentor on top of like all the other outlets. So you'll never feel alone. You have a bunch of people at your disposal that will be there to support you. So, and also like Dr. Brooks said, like talk with everybody, you know, you don't need to isolate. You're as isolated as you make yourself.
Yeah. And like kind of like piggybacking on that, like even during COVID, I Sarah and I were part of like a study group, and you know, like we would like literally we would book a room and we would just study 24/7 leading up to an exam. So like now it's like we don't see each other anymore. And so like sometimes I know that whenever I'm like overwhelmed with the material, like studying at home, I'm like, I message her or Angelina, and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of feeling that same too. And like it kind of like, you know, you realize that you're not alone. And I feel like that's what I miss most about being able to study on campus is like, you know, I knew that I wasn't alone. Now it feels like I'm alone, but I know I'm not alone.
absolutely. And Jack, there are no requirements for joining LSMA. We're like pretty chillax. Like if you come to our meetings, we'll just add you to our listserv. And like, so LMSA, like we haven't really talked about what it is like as a whole, but we have so many subsets of activities that we do. So if you want to do like Spanish tutoring, if you want to do clinic, if you want to do outreach, like whatever you want to do, like we consider you part of our family already. And it's a question that we got a lot before when the M1s were coming in and we were doing an orientation for them about LMSA. I got like 7 or 8 emails asking me like, can I be part of an LMSA if I'm not Latino? And I was like, oh my God, of course you can. Like if you are passionate about like serving underrepresented communities, if you are passionate about giving a voice to people who have been shut out for so long, like we are here for you. Like we would love to have your help. We would love to have your power and your energy. So like don't ever think that like just because you're not Latino you can't join LMSA. Like,
yeah, it's a great point. And so we're getting a little short on time, so I just want to ask, One last question. That's a little bit, it's a little more like lengthy question. So please elaborate on your experiences as Hispanic females and your journeys applying and attending medical school.
I was reading the chat. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. Please elaborate on your experiences as Hispanic females and your journeys applying and attending medical school.
I'll start since I'm unmuted. Wow. You know, it's one of those things where like Myra said, like you feel alone sometimes. Like you feel like, wow, is there people who look like me, who have come from experiences like me in the community? And I really wish there was an underrepresented in medicine event when I was thinking of applying, because it would have encouraged me that much more. When I was in undergrad, I tried to look for other pre-med Latinos, and it was super hard. Like a lot of them like got discouraged during undergrad. So like I'm sure that's what you guys are feeling too, because like you're in we are similar in that way. But once I got here and I like joined LMSA and got around such beautiful, empowered women, Latina women, Myra, she's like my inspiration every day. It pushed me to be like, hey, we can do this, like we can achieve so much more. And that's one of the things that I've loved about Wayne State and being part of LMSA so far. It's just like seeing other people like me, seeing other people struggling like me, like we can do this and we can push through and we can help our community.
Yeah, I think my story is a little bit different, or still similar, but just like both my parents are in medicine, so I think that idea of being able to accomplish this was always there. But even then, like I still got lost along the way. Like both my parents went to med school in Mexico, so they never had to navigate the American med school system. Things were just a lot different back then too. So it was still like I was applying here without any guidance because my parents didn't navigate it. So that part is still like the same and still difficult. And like I think even when I was younger, I had like a chronic illness, and it was really difficult to get care and like have someone that understood me until like my parents were like, oh, we need to send you to like the best doctors and you're gonna go all the way to Los Angeles. And it just like, we didn't have that connection. But when I went to my community doctor, who was Dominican, and he just like, we could speak in the same language and we had similar cultural like interests and just things that were very similar. It was nice to seek and be treated by him because we were so similar, so that is the kind of like one of the reasons why I wanted to be an LMSA, because I know how important it is to see someone that looks like you in a field that you want to go into. And it especially for Latinos, a lot of them don't seek healthcare. One may be access, or maybe embarrassment, or just maybe like you don't like doctors, you're afraid of them. But seeing someone that looks like you not only allows you to go seek the care, but also gives you that notion that you too can succeed and get to that point.
Yeah, like pretty much what everyone's been saying. I was the first in my family to I remember to apply to undergrad. I remember like before the deadline, like back in 2008, before the deadline for the undergraduate applications, I remember messaging my friend, and we were like going back and forth of like, did you separate your personal statement into two, or did you copy and paste it all in one? Because like no one ever did that. Like I had like no one to really go to, and then like going into undergrad, like no one in my family was in STEM, like so it was like, oh, you're not going to this party, like why are you studying at home all the time? And like nobody really got it. And then I undergrad was a struggle for me, so like I kind of switched paths and decided to go to grad school. And even in grad school, I was the only Latina in my cohort of 20, I think. So for me, that was kind of like, okay, there's like, especially in California, I was like, there's so many Latinos in California, but yet here's this program that only had one Latina. And then you can like in the entire in the entire program, there were such few of us. And then, you know, applying to med school, like it really took a village to get to where I am now, in terms of like, even like starting with like taking like my parents and my family, my husband's family, taking care, helping with the kids. Because I knew that I wanted to have kids, and you know, it was just like the path for me. And I didn't want to wait until after med school, which kind of turns out better because now I don't have to deal with that newborn phase post med school, but that's like a whole nother story. But yeah, it's definitely taken a whole village to get to where I am now. And it's like making connections was really important. Like during I went to a conference when I was getting ready to apply and take the MCAT, and I ran into one of my friends from high school who was at that point, she was a second year med student at UC Davis School of Medicine, and she helped me with my application, preparing for my applications. I got involved with Mi Mentor, which is like, I don't know if it's prevalent here in Michigan, but it was really prevalent in California. And they had like a medical school series program, and I applied to that and I got accepted, and they helped me like prepare my entire application from like the personal statement and like all of the diversity statement and like letters of rec, getting those, because especially for me that was hard because I had been out of school for so long. So like it's just like just knowing what's out there and like making connections. I feel like that's what's really helped me get to where I am now.
Yeah, I totally agree with making connections. I feel like, especially when I was because I came from an environment where the women in my family, they didn't really pursue higher education. Like my mother was a homemaker, and her mother before that had never gone to school past the like 5th grade. And so like for me to even like pursue education, like I wasn't discouraged, but it was like I didn't know what tools are. And I know every child of immigrants can identify with filling out the FAFSA by yourself, and you know, you're on your own basically. Like, your parents don't know any of that stuff. And so like I had to like shut out the fear and the shyness of reaching out to administrators or, you know, cold calling doctors if I could shadow them, because, you know, you don't really have anyone who can connect you with someone. So the most important thing, especially like if you're first generation or if you have barriers to going, is to like use those barriers as strengths, because the skills you develop by eliminating shyness and calling people or, you know, reaching out to people, that stuff makes you such a resourceful person over time, and you develop this kind of internal hardness that can get you through anything. Like one of the jokes people make with the personal statement for applying to medical school is that that paper has to be your reason for doing medicine, even when it gets so tough that you want to quit. Like, you know, you're sitting at 12 a.m. trying to like remember vitamin deficiencies and you can't. Like that paper, what you put down, like every single moment challenge that brought you to that like time that you're in medical school, like that is what keeps you going. So being, you know, a Latina in medicine, being first generation, you're validating the experiences of other people and you're paving the way for other people. Like every single person in this panel has like serves as like a beacon for somebody who's like, you know, sitting in high school or sitting in college and is afraid that they might not make it. So that's something to keep in mind, is that you can do it. You just need to be so resourceful that no one can question your ability.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just want to take this time to close us out and thank everyone that was able to join us today. We really appreciate you all being here and listening to us share our stories, because it's something that we noticed was missing on our end, and it's so important in the application process and deciding where you want to go to medical school. So I hope that you have taken away some gems from today. There was so much information that was shared. So this meeting is recorded. It will be posted, so you can watch it later if there's something that you missed, or if there's something that you want to know again or get more information about. And there's a couple emails in the chat. If you're looking for a mentor, Myra's email's in the chat, and she's our coordinator. You can get hooked up with one of our LMSA mentors here at Wayne State. If anyone else has any last closing thoughts, one of our last questions was, what do you wish you knew before applying to med school? And I just really like that question. I know that some bits and pieces have already been shared about, you know, making connections and being so determined that, you know, you can't be questioned. But I think something just that I wish I knew before I applied to med school was the earlier you apply, the better it is. And I did not apply the first day it opened. I didn't apply the second day it opened. I applied like the 40th day or the 50th day. And I know that it would have been less stressful and easier for me had I taken the initiative to do all the things I was supposed to do sooner. But I didn't know what I needed to do. And I think this kind of goes back to the point of mentorship and connection, that in order to know what you need to do, you need to have people that have already done the things that you're doing. And so reach out, make those connections, and best of luck. If any of our other panelists have any last thoughts they want to share.
Yeah, I just want to throw out there that Wayne does have an early decision program, and that's what I applied through. You guys can look up the statistics. It's pretty interesting to see how many people actually get in when you apply early decision. So look into that. And also, actually, when you're in medical school, it's a roller coaster of emotions. One day you'll think you're the smartest person in the world. The next thing you'll think you're the dumbest person in the world. But that was like, I wish somebody had told me that before, because I had no idea I could cry and laugh so hard in the same day. But yeah, but you can do it. Don't feel that imposter syndrome that I'm still trying to get rid of sometimes.
I just have one general tip for the application cycle that I was thankful that I had the post-bac I went to, they had a class called Applying Colloquium, and they broke down the application. So let's say you take your MCAT late, or you take it June or like May 31st and the application opens June 1st, and you still want to apply, but you don't have your score. You apply to one school, and it has to be a reach school, so that if you decide not to apply that year, you're only a reapplicant to that school, as opposed to a reapplicant to all the schools that you want to apply to.
Yeah, and just one real quick thing I want to throw out there, because people overlook this when they apply. If you feel for any reason that cost or finances is an issue in applying, AMC has a fee assistance program, and you have to apply for that early. And you can, so like, you know, if you're studying for the MCAT, they give you all their MCAT resources for free if you're eligible, and you can apply. I think it used to be when I applied like 16 medical schools for free. Or something like that. I think they've upped it to 20, and then everyone after that is discounted. Your MCAT registration is discounted. So make sure you look into that, because it's so useful for the people who are eligible.
I just want to say one last thing. I just want to say, help each other, support each other, because together you can be successful. And ally with your other classmates, the BMA and the other groups. Allies, support each other. You guys have to work together. You're stronger together. So never forget that. And I think that'll be your key to success. So it was my pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And just kind of to go off of that and close our time today, because we are getting to our hour. Medicine and pre-med is a very competitive place to be, and it can really take a toll on someone if you're trying to do it alone. So your friends are not your competition. Your pre-med cohort is not your competition. There are hundreds of medical schools. You will get in. And if you apply yourself, and if you put your best foot forward every day and stay dedicated, you just keep doing you. And your friends are your support system, like Dr. Brooks said, and Myra said, and Michelle and Sarah and Angelina. We are friends in med school. LMSA is a group of friends, and we support each other, and we help each other, and we mentor each other through med school. And if I had had a group like this in undergrad, I would have joined it my freshman year. And I think that you all are on to great things. Best of luck in the application cycle. And with that, I think we should close our time so we don't take too much more of your day. Have a good one, everyone.